KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station.
Hamas has freed 31 more women and children during the pause in fighting. Now, an extension could mean more hostages are released from Gaza in exchange for Palestinian prisoners and a halt in fighting. Israel has said it would extend the ceasefire by a day for every 10 additional hostages who are released. CIA Director William Burns arrived in Qatar today for secret meetings with Israel's spy chief and Qatar's prime minister aimed at brokering an expansive deal between Israel and Hamas. Burns is pushing for Hamas and Israel to broaden the focus of their ongoing hostage negotiations, thus far limited to women and children, to encompass the release of men and military personnel too. Now, despite the pause in fighting, Palestinians in Gaza are burning door frames and piles of garbage to cook, sleeping crammed into school classrooms and strangers' homes, and scrambling onto trucks bringing aid from Egypt in a desperate grab for supplies. 1.7 million people are internally displaced, most of them crammed into the southern half of the Gaza Strip, after Israel demanded that civilians leave the north days after its military offensive began last month. Some say they are losing hope. Hunter Biden's lawyer said Tuesday that the president's son is willing to testify in a public hearing before the House Oversight Committee. A letter from his attorney came in response to a subpoena this month that is seeking a deposition, which would take place behind closed doors. Now, this is a striking escalation in the battle between the president's son and congressional Republicans who have focused on his past business dealings and have launched impeachment hearings aimed at President Biden. Fox News will host a 90-minute debate between Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida and Governor Gavin Newsom of California at 9 p.m. Eastern Time this Thursday. This unusual event between a Republican presidential candidate and a high-profile Democratic governor who has been a surrogate for the Biden administration will be moderated by Sean Hannity, the conservative primetime host and close ally of Donald J. Trump. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trendy news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we dig a little deeper, where we go behind the headlines and talk about those stories that have you talking. Today, we got lots to talk about, and we're talking about the aftermath of the decision overturning affirmative action in college admissions. The Fearless Fund, as well as the Fearless Fund Foundation, both organizations, venture capital organizations owned and founded by Black women, have been sued by the nonprofit American Alliance for Equal Rights. This is a conservative group started by Edward Bloom, a key activist in the successful challenge of affirmative action in college admissions. The Alliance sued Fearless earlier this summer, alleging that their $20,000 small business grant program was racially discriminatory because it was only for Black women. Now, the Fearless Fund, of course, and its founders, its attorneys are fighting back. There's been a hearing at the federal district court level, and the 11th Circuit, a 3-panel judge, actually issued an injunction last month, basically preventing the fund from going forward with its applications, the acceptance of the applications, or the closure of its application process and the granting of those $20,000 grants. Today, we're going to talk to a co-founder of the Fearless Fund and the Fearless Fund Foundation, as well as a leader, a director from the National Minority Council on Business, about what this lawsuit means. What is it likely to mean for other minority-owned businesses, other businesses, even including big law firms that have similar programs that are targeted towards women of color, people of color. We know that one of the nation's largest law firms, Morrison Foerster, is one of the firms that was targeted because of its diversity fellowship. And based on being targeted, it made some changes to its criteria as it relates to students, law students, that are now eligible for those diversity scholarships. Is this what businesses are going to have to do, which is basically kowtow to Edward Bloom and conservatives on the right? We're going to get into that when we come forward and talk to some fearless women about how they are fighting back. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though?
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays.
The Fearless Fund, an Atlanta-based and Black woman-funded venture capital firm, won the first battle in a lawsuit they are facing, alleging a grant program for Black women and small business owners, Black small business owners, is racially discriminatory. They won their first battle in that lawsuit in the federal district court. However, the defendant, Edward Bloom, and the nonprofit organization that he has led that has been challenging affirmative action programs in universities around this country, appealed the decision of the federal district court. He filed an appeal, or his group filed an appeal to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal, and the Circuit Court of Appeal had a different interpretation. There was a different outcome at the appellate level than at the federal court level. Arian Simone, co-founder and CEO of the Fearless Foundation, is joining me, as well as Ying, McGuire, president and CEO of the National Minority Supplier Development Council. And later in this hour, Dr. Ty Douglas, who is a professor at the University of Berkeley and an expert on diversity, equity, and inclusion, is going to join in this conversation because there are a lot of constitutional arguments and issues raised by this lawsuit. So I want to make sure we cover what's happening or what's likely to happen with this lawsuit. if it makes its way to the Supreme Court. But thank you so much, Arian, and thank you so much, Ying, for joining. Arian, can you just kind of give us a synopsis of where the lawsuit is now and where that small business grant program is?
Yes, and due to the fact that we are in an active lawsuit, I will be speaking based upon what you can see in the public. What you can see in the public is that we were definitely sued on August 2nd. We're being sued for alleged discrimination. And during that time, there was a complaint filed as well as a preliminary injunction. Fast forward, we went to court, as you stated, and in the district court, we won for the preliminary injunction. After that, it was appealed. And we are currently going through the appellate process in the 11th Circuit regarding the appeal. So that's where we are at. The plaintiffs, they sent in their brief. We have time, we have to respond back to that. And then they have an opportunity to respond to our response.
So since the 11th Circuit basically overruled the federal district court, is the grant program itself just on hold as the matter works its way through the court system?
That is correct. As it states right now, the grant program is on pause.
Talk a little about, what the purpose of the grant program is. Like, what was the intention of you, your co-founder, the organization in creating this grant program?
Well, I'll even speak a step before that. The foundation is designed to provide grants as well as education to women of color. We have been very instrumental in doing that. We have awarded over 350 women of color businesses grants. We have deployed millions of dollars in grant funding. We have educated over 1,000 women of color founders every single year in the area of venture education. All of our grant programs, because we have multiple ones, they are all designed to add capital and the access of capital to women of color founders. As we know, women of color are the most founded entrepreneur demographic. They are unfortunately just the least funded. And with that being said, these grants are able to help them with job creation. They're able to help them with marketing. They are able to help them with cash flow management. It is essential that they receive the capital that they actually deserve in order to help scale and grow their businesses. So just like this one grant program, all of our grant programs provide those opportunities.
Ying, so given what we just heard about the work of the Fearless Fund and their efforts to provide support to minority female business owners, what do you make of Edward Bloom and the American Alliance for Equal Rights, the timing of their lawsuit and the targeting of the Fearless Fund? Because clearly they're not the only organization providing these kinds of grants to Black-owned women, Latin-owned women, Indigenous women. There are lots of grant programs out there. Why this organization and why this time?
Yeah, so this has been a well-funded and purposeful and coordinated legal and political strategy really aimed at blocking full participation for systemically excluded community of color economic life. So this is one of many. This group have been pursuing a three-pronged political and legal strategy designed to really dismantle the legal basis for programs and policies designed to promote inclusion and level the playing field for minority businesses, which the NMSDC network have tirelessly fought for over the past 50 years, including government contracting preferences, corporate supply diversity initiatives, workforce diversity, and related efforts. And also, it is aimed to shift the risk calculus for corporate leaders regarding to DEI and supply diversity programs and other activities, and mobilize the voters for the 2024 elections by providing the narrative and talking points for candidates and the parties, and shaping the news cycle leading up to November 2024. And so this is not the first one. It's not going to be the last one. And with these organizations are doing including Fearless Fund, are doing everything they can to push back against this baseless lawsuit. NMSDC and our partners realize that they cannot do it alone. That's why we're here to support Arian and the Fearless Fund and the Fearless Foundation.
So Ying, you say this isn't the first one, meaning the first lawsuit. How pervasive are these kinds of lawsuits? Or, how often are you seeing these kinds of lawsuits targeting Black female-owned business or just Black-owned businesses that are trying to provide some kind of financial support for other Black and minority business owners?
Yeah, I think the recent affirmative action decision definitely emboldened the movement and increased the number of these attacks. And other legal challenges, give you a few examples. A challenge to the constitutionality of the Minority Business Development Agency in the Department of Commerce was advancing through the court system after a district court judge in Texas issued a injunction against 3 MBDA centers, and some of them were run by our NMSDC affiliates. And one of the cases that got most attention from our community is a case against USDA and SBA at the Tennessee District Court judge ruled that government could not presume that all business owners in the category deemed eligible for participate in the 8A Business Development and Contracting Program disadvantage. And there were many NMSDC corporate members got challenged by some of the lawsuit, like a Starbucks Corporation. There was a lawsuit claiming that companies' targets and practices for diverse hiring and contracting spend reflected anti-white discrimination. And the Kellogg Company and then Target Company, and all of them, our corporate members, have been committed to promote a diverse and inclusive economy for the really well-being of our country. So these attacks are not the first we witnessed over the last 50 years, and certainly will not be the last.
So Arian, if you are not, the Fearless Fund is not able to, have these kind of grant programs like this one, what would that mean for your business and the mission of your organization? If the court somehow magically rules, given, the conservative Supreme Court, if this case makes its way to the Supreme Court, we know there's a 6-3 conservative majority. We saw what happened to college admissions, affirmative action. So I don't think it'd be far-fetched to see this particular court as currently constituted make, similar what many of us believe to be flawed arguments to try to support the conservative ideology of folks like Edward Bloom and his nonprofit. So just looking down the road, how would that impact your organization?
Well, two things. You're correct. What is at stake is if we lose, everybody loses. And if we win, everybody wins. And you were able to cite, of course, the affirmative action case when there were only 2 schools that were in the case, but yet everybody lost. So we have to be mindful of that so we all know what is at stake and how serious this lawsuit is. It also has a chilling effect, meaning that just by suing somebody, you're instilling fear. Mm-hmm. People are withdrawing from their programs, whether they're being sued or not, because they're in fear of being sued. But in the event, which I do, of course, pray everything does go our way and we are very well supported, I would say that we would have to creatively figure out how to still continue this work. This work is important. These disparities are real. And we have to figure out how to still continue to do this work.
And you mentioned that chilling effect, and you're absolutely right. These kinds of lawsuits can make it very difficult for organizations like yours to seek funding. Sometimes funders get spooked. I cited that Morrison and Forrester law firm policy, that diversity fellowship. I know students who have benefited from that diversity fellowship. And I was saddened to see that Morrison and Forrester were going to change their policies. Have you had that happen where any of your funders or any of your partners have been spooked by this lawsuit, quite frankly said, we're going to just sit back and wait before we make any additional financial investments?
Well, we will see. We're in the middle of fundraising all the time with the business that we do. We are aware that a lot of our investors and our donors have received threatening letters. We run two different businesses. The fund is an investment vehicle. The foundation is a philanthropic vehicle. And we know on both sides of those businesses that they have received letters to stop their DEI funding. And hopefully they plan to stand by their commitments. But only time will tell if they're willing to stand by their commitments.
And Ying, we did see big companies that came out very aggressively after George Floyd's murder, after the civil unrest. A lot of them came out and pledged billions of dollars to minority-owned businesses. There's a recent article in the New York Times about how that money began to dry up after 2020 or during 2021, and that some of those businesses that had exponential revenue growth in 20 and 21 now are on the verge of bankruptcy or closure. So what are you seeing with regards to some of these big companies like a Target or McDonald's or others who were very vocal about supporting minority businesses? Are you seeing any of them take a step backwards because of the ending of COVID, the kind of 24/7 news cycle that has, made the George Floyd murder and the civil unrest, not a front page story, and then a lawsuit like this, as well as the one involving college admissions?
So as I shared earlier, all of these attacks definitely change the risk calculus of a corporate America on their investment to DEI. But I think the corporate America, large corporations, I want to see them going two different directions. Those corporations that was doing this for compliance reasons in the past, you're definitely going to see they're going to pack their bag and start to do less or eliminate their DEI programs. But for those corporations who believe that diversity and promoting minority-owned businesses, it's good for their shareholders' value, it's good for their top line, bottom line, it's good for the future of our economy, they will not step back. I have, right now, I have to be very optimistic. We work with our corporate members every day, and I have confidence in our corporate leaders who are resolute in their determination to shine a spotlight of hope in this devastated situation. I believe our corporate leaders recognize that systemic racial economic inequality pose a threat to our nation's progress. They understand that the financial cloud is a powerful equalizer. They believe the business ownership is the key to economic empowerment, and they see an untapped supplier resources in people of color. In fact, an untapped consumer base in people of color. So I believe this corporate leader will rise to the occasion again, just like they did in 1960s, in 1970s, after the civil rights movement, and they have to take leadership and get us through this.
Arian, have you seen that? Have you seen any of these corporations that Ying is, making reference to without calling names? But have you seen some of these big corporate CEOs, stand up and push back in terms of the lawsuit against your organization? But as you said, the notion that if this lawsuit succeeds, it will have greater impact, much greater impact on other diversity programs at businesses big and small. Are you getting much support from those corporate leaders? Public support, not calling you up or sending you a DM or a private text, but folks who have a platform and power, who can write op-ed pieces, who can go on shows and, can stand with you in a public way. Is that happening?
What I can say, a few people I have seen, not necessarily that there are investors, but as Ying was stating, people who truly believe in DEI, they will keep their stance. So I have seen a few corporations saying that they're going to continue in their efforts. Have I seen a widespread movement the way we did in the racial reckoning of 2020? I mean, that answer is obvious, and we know that answer is no. So I haven't seen that yet. We are charging all of our corporate investors, even as of recent, to say something. So we will see very soon who's willing to say something publicly and who is not. So it may just take a little time, but I'm definitely going to be observant to see who is truly in this with us, or were they just in this because it looked good at the moment?
Yeah, we heard a lot about performative. That was a word became very popular. Everyone was using as, companies posted black squares on their Instagram as they issued very fanciful press releases, very powerful in some cases, and made pledges. Real quickly, Ying, a lot of that money that was pledged, when I talked to a lot of small business owners, they said that money, a lot of it from corporate America, never made its way into the pockets of Black business owners or into their businesses. Is there anything that your organization is doing around that?
We are seeing some of the dollar went directly to minority business development. For example, our Center for Excellence program that we develop smaller MBEs and move them into a mid-sized businesses, and that's entirely funded by our corporate dollar and the corporate foundation dollars. I think, like I said earlier, that companies with the compliance mindset, we don't know where the dollar went, but for the companies who see this as economic growth opportunity, we're definitely seeing that pledge is becoming a reality through organizations like NMSDC.
And Arian, we're almost out of time. So real quickly, tell us what the We Are All Fearless campaign is.
Oh my gosh, that may be a question actually for Ying. The NMSDC has been very instrumental, and thank you, Ying, in standing with us in this fight. And it was their idea to come up with the We Are All Fearless campaign because they wanted the world to see we are all in this together. It's not just the face of the Fearless Fund. If we win, we all win. And if we lose, we all lose. So we have joined together forces for a campaign for everybody to understand, no, we are all fearless.
Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Ying McGuire, for the work that you do. And thank you, Arian, Simone. We will be watching this lawsuit very closely. Dr. Ty Douglas is going to join us when we come forward to talk about some of the legal implications and the constitutional issues raised by this lawsuit. But again, best of luck in your efforts to fight back against Edward Bloom and his conservative organization. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, ma. House shot with a rest spot.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news? trending topics and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a.
Back, and in this hour, we're talking about the Lawyers for the American Alliance for Equal Rights, a conservative group that filed a lawsuit against African-American-owned Atlanta-based venture capital firm Fearless Fund. They claim that the $20,000 grant program set up by the Fearless Fund for Black female business owners was a textbook case of racial discrimination. A federal district court in Atlanta disagreed, saying the program sends a message that Fearless wants to support Black women business owners and that message is protected free speech. Well, as you can imagine, American Alliance for Equal Rights immediately filed an appeal to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and a 3-judge panel, siding with American Alliance for Equal Rights, said that the district court got it wrong, and basically said the parties need to brief the court and that the defendant, i.e. Fearless Fund, needed to explain how its $20,000 grant fund program targeted to Black women was not a classic and textbook case of discrimination. I have some brilliant law professors who are joining me to help us make sense of all of this. Joining me is Dr. Sydney Freeman and Dr. Zebulon Miletsky. Thanks to both of you for joining me. Really appreciate your insights on this. Obviously, after the decision by the Supreme Court overturning or basically saying that affirmative action in college admissions was no longer valid, it sent universities and schools scrambling. Many of us expected that there'd be similar challenges to diversity programs in companies. I guess, Dr. Freeman, though, what I didn't expect was that one of the cases out the gate would be targeted at this African-American female-owned venture fund out of Atlanta. Help us understand what the district court did in this case, and how is it that the 11th Circuit said, District Court, you got this completely wrong?
Well, I'm not so I've heard about the case, and I'm actually not a law professor. I'm actually a professor of leadership and education, and I focus in on higher education leadership. But I will say this, I am not surprised that this has moved beyond the educational sphere and applied to other spheres in which Blacks work. And one of the things that we've seen is just the overreach and the overcompensation for and against Black progress in these particular areas. And so I'm not surprised that they're going after these women who are trying to help out these Black women who are trying to empower other Black women. I've found in higher education that many institutions are not allowed to specifically provide scholarships for Black people and things like that. And I can see that those policies and things will also impact other organizations and businesses, those who are trying to specifically advance Black people in their organizations.
So, Dr. Miletsky, were you surprised by the ruling of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, them basically telling the district court that they got this wrong?
Well, nothing surprises me lately. It's just the coarseness in our dialogue lately, and in our relationship to each other. I think that we're seeing, if there was any question about the sort of viciousness of some of these decisions and their implications for how they affect Black people, because people asked and made these arguments early on, and they said no, this is just unconstitutional. But you see this sort of almost targeting happening here, and proof again that it almost reminds me of times past where you had, like Black Wall Street, you had successful Black businesses and entrepreneurship. And that's really what seems to be at issue here is Black success, and so, but to tell you the truth, yeah, it did surprise me, because I don't think any of us really kind of saw that coming.
Yeah, and Dr. Freeman, Arian talked about the implications if this lawsuit fails, and fails meaning if the defendants, the Fearless Fund, is not successful in beating back this lawsuit. And again, given what we know about our Supreme Court, this could be really the undoing of decades and decades and decades of affirmative, and I won't call it affirmative action, but decades of diversity programs that exist in many, many industries in this country. Programs that are designed to increase the number of minority students in the pipeline for certain kinds of companies, certain kinds of industries. What would our companies, what would our country, what would our corporations and organizations look like if we're not able to use, a targeted diversity program?
Well, we've seen that in higher education, where, let's say in California, when they struck down affirmative action, and as it relates to students admitting students, and the number of African American students to the University of California system went down a lot. And so I think this is going to impact a lot of the major work that's been done over the years in corporations, in law firms, and just across the board. So we have to be very vigilant as Black folks to push back on these things and be thinking strategically about ways in which to continue to advance Black progress. We can't just sit on our laurels, and whether they lose the case or not, we still have to be very vigilant about making sure that we are advancing our people.
Yeah, and Dr. Miletsky, what happens if a corporation, because I asked Arian, have any of the companies that have supported the Fearless Fund, obviously have donated or invested, I shouldn't say donated, but maybe donated on their philanthropic side, but invested on their venture capital side, had any of them come out publicly? And she said, not yet. She's going to be watching to see if that happens. But what are the risks of a major financial institution or financial company coming forward, standing with Fearless Fund and pushing back against this kind of attack by the American Alliance?
Yeah, well, it's going to be the test of all this, what they call DEI work that's been done. So many companies have invested in diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially after the murder of George Floyd. You saw an outpouring in terms of, American corporations saying, hey, what can we do? And people said, well, take a look at your boards. Do you have any people of color on the boards? The number of companies that don't have people of color is like staggering, even still. But people made the investment. There's pretty much no American corporation today, or higher ed, or many other institutions, that don't have one person in place, in position, hopefully with a voting seat on the board around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So people are going to have to put their money where their mouth is. I wouldn't be surprised if some do come forward and say, no, this is good business. This is not some kind of a scheme. This is something that we feel that actually improves and builds upon, in some way, giving back for all the years of divestment in the Black community.
Yeah, when we come forward, I want to talk about the risks that many companies see when they do make those kinds of statements, when they do stand in solidarity, particularly how their board members respond. We've seen companies who've been targeted for boycotting and others in Target's case, just for a display of a LGBTQ, some kind of display during Pride Month. So it's become very, very challenging for companies to take a position, either pro or con, on some of these hot button social issues. More on this topic when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news? trending topics and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union. Weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
We are back, and we're talking about the risk associated with corporations standing in solidarity with the Fearless Fund and other organizations to protect diversity and equity programs in corporate America. I'm looking at an article, Dr. Miletsky, about political activism in Florida, and corporations like Amazon, AT&T, Comcast, Disney, and Walmart have been publicly outed because they say these companies publicly proclaim their commitment to anti-racist values. They did so pretty loudly after the 2020 murder of George Floyd, but research by the Center for Political Accountability found that these same corporations were directly or indirectly donating to Ron DeSantis, the governor in Florida, who has supposed limits on how race and racism can be taught in Florida schools. And, they were called out because folks say, look, you can't, corporation, say that you stand with the Black community, but also fund the governor and his work around dismantling Black history. How is that, the duplicity that we've seen in many of these corporations, how is that likely to impact what happens in this lawsuit?
Yeah, that's embarrassing for Amazon and companies like that. You can't turn a corner these days without seeing an Amazon truck. They've really dominated the industry. Talk about cornering the market. And so it matters. It matters what large companies, corporations, what they used to call the blue chip companies that drove the stock market. And there was it's like 20 companies for years that did that. And now Amazon and Tesla and some of these newer companies are driving American corporations and driving the economy. So it's very important to honor these kinds. Anybody can make a courageous kind of statement, around how they feel about racial issues at a certain time, and folks wonder, are they just trying to take advantage of the political moment? Do they mean what they say? There's a lot of companies that had commercials about Juneteenth, but then they didn't give their employees the day off on Juneteenth. So we got to hold them accountable. And that's why I love your show, Areva, because you do that in terms of bringing that information and bringing the receipts. That's what we need to see here in terms of their commitment.
Well, thank you. And thank you for always joining and adding your brilliance to it, because this is complicated stuff, Dr. Freeman. Some of these companies, as Dr. Miletsky said, we like getting our Amazon packages, right? We like not having to go to the mall for everything. And, they've changed the game in terms of how folks shop, but they're on this list of companies that have supported not just Ron DeSantis, but the Florida Republican Party, to the tune of six-figure type checks, while that Republican GOP-led House was dismantling diversity, equity, inclusion programs across all state colleges in Florida. This is the same group of companies that were also supporting DeSantis as he blocked the new advanced placement course on African American studies. So I guess the question is it unrealistic for us to think that these companies who are driven by shareholder profits, who've got to, at the end of the day, prove to their shareholders that they are profitable, that they can afford to alienate? I mean, we know where a lot of Walmart stores are in particular. We know the Walmart audience. We know the Walmart demographic. Can they afford to alienate that demographic? Or so should we just expect them to play both sides, stand up for Black History Month, stand up for Juneteenth, and write big checks to the Republicans?
Well, that's what they're going to do unless we come together and we push back on this. And so one of the challenges is, and one of the major challenges is that many of our major organizations like the NAACP, our National Urban League, and others have not been able to kind of bring us together and say, listen, let's put pressure on these particular companies. Some of our other organizations, I think when you talk about the Black church as being one of our seminal organizations in our communities, it's really important for them to bring us together and to also say, here collectively, this is how we're going to move forward with making these companies pay, because us just doing it individually is not going to work. It's going to be us working together. And I think it takes leadership, and it takes leadership from some of our organizations. And it's I also want to say thank you for your platform, because it informs the community about what we need to do. And so more and more, we need our leaders to step up and say, this is how we move forward collectively to put pressure on these companies to keep their word to us.
And thank you again to Dr. Freeman for joining and lending your expertise. But Dr. Miletsky, you are a professor of African American history. You've studied African American history now for most of your career. Is what Dr. Freeman talking about, is that realistic, given that we're not a monolith as a Black community? Is there any precedent for that happening throughout our history? Is there any movement that we can look to that has been able to do what Dr. Freeman talked about that has been successful?
Yeah. I mean, we ought to look back and look at the playbook, if you will, because this case with the Fearless Fund, the allegation was that it violated the Reconstruction Era Civil Rights Act of 1866. And so if they are looking at, laws that go back as far back as the 19th century, then we have to also think historically about movements that have worked. And now he makes a very good point. The problem, I think, is that in our current era, nothing against the nation's oldest civil rights organization, the NAACP, or any other organizations that go way back, because there's been some major victories. But a lot of them are sponsored by, some of these corporations. And so we have to be mindful of where we accept money from, and really.
Now, Dr. Miletsky, a lot of those leaders and those legacy, as we call them, organizations, would push back and say, yes, we accept donations from major corporations because, one, these corporations have indicated a willingness to do work in our community. They're giving money to white organizations. And why shouldn't we be in that line or at the table? And we can take their money and not be swayed by, not be, overly influenced by, not allow our policies and our ideologies and our strategies to be impacted by the fact that they may be a funder at a dinner or they may be, a supporter.
Yeah, I mean, it takes funds to do this work. There's no doubt about that. But he who pays the piper calls the tune, as they say. And so if who's paying for our seat at the table, that also, I think, just needs to be taken into consideration. Organizations in the past, for example, Booker T. Washington, he took a lot of funds and money from different philanthropists and stuff like that. He was able to build Tuskegee University, a great cornerstone in the Black experience. But it also forced him to have to compromise on some of his positions, and that's the problem sometimes with when we go for the funding. We just we need a litmus test, to see where some of these companies have stood. If you're supporting Ron DeSantis and you're Amazon, used to be one of the greatest booksellers, they're banning books in Florida. There's a contradiction there, that needs to be considered, and it hurts our people.
No doubt about it. Obviously, legacy organizations like the NAACP, the Urban League, are not the only ones that have a responsibility. They've been, we've had some amazing leaders of those organizations that have done a lot of great work to move us forward, just like we've had amazing civil rights leaders. I've been watching the documentary on Rustin. And he's an unsung hero who's finally, his story is being told. But this is complex work, obviously, as you said, Professor. It takes money, it takes resources to organize and to build movement, particularly across the country, to bring people together and to really have a seat at the table. So, this is going to be a lawsuit that we'll be watching for a while. We'll watch it for as long as it goes. We'll be standing in solidarity with the Fearless Fund. And I think all of us should, take the opportunity to educate ourselves on what's happening, because Arian is right. What happens in that lawsuit is going to have far-reaching impact on all of us. And we're going to need all of our organizations, NAACP, Urban League, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, every civil rights organization in this country working, and every individual. So we just can't, put this burden on those organizations. Like I said, many of them do phenomenal work. Some of my best friends are working at some of them. So each and every one of us has to ask ourselves, what are we doing to advance this cause? Because this is not easy work. We are out of time. Thanks so much to both of you for jumping on this really important conversation. Always a pleasure to be in, conversation with both of you. When we come forward, next voice that you hear is Robin Ayers and the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Don't touch that dial.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud.